Hey guys, it's Justine again, and I read my first Cassandra Clare book when I was 11 years old, the summer before 6th grade. Why is this important? First of all, because that book was City of Bones, and City of Bones has like a shirtless man on the cover, and I don't know who was letting 11-year-old me run around with a book that looked like this. But yeah, that was happening. That means that I've been reading Cassandra Clare books for 7 years now, and Chain of Thorns is my 20th Cassandra Clare book. 20th and a half if you count the Iron Trials, which is co-authored by Cassandra Clare with Holly Black. Fun fact, last year I took AP Research and I did my AP Research paper on Cassandra Clare books. I was about to make a YouTube video on it, but then I realized I got a 4 on the AP exam, and that was embarrassing, so I didn't make a video on it, but it happened. It was a thing I certainly did. So I guess you could say I'm a pretty big fan. So I've been waiting for Chain of Thorns to come out for around like a year and a half or so, and it's finally here. What am I gonna do in this video? I'm basically gonna rehash my reading experience. If you haven't watched my Chain of Gold video, I highly recommend that you watch it because that's where I describe like most of the characters, and there are a lot of characters, and I feel like it's a little bit important to know, but it's okay because I'll re-describe them to you now, but it's gonna be less descriptive. I'm just gonna basically go through the entire book and explain, what I liked, what I didn't like about it. So we're gonna start with a recap of Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron. I actually don't have a Chain of Iron video because that was around when I stopped doing YouTube for like 10 months. But yeah, Chain of Iron I have similar thoughts to as like Chain of Gold, so you're not really missing anything. So I'm just gonna recap. So we leave off at the end of Chain of Iron. Cordelia realizes that she's been tricked into being the paladin of Lilith. Oh god. I didn't realize her name would be so hard to say out loud. It looks really easy on the page. Lilith. So Cordelia is our main girl. She is Cordelia Carstairs, so she's like the ancestor of some pretty popular book characters down the road, but yeah, and what does this mean? This means she can't wield a weapon or Lilith will show up. And this is bad because Lilith can like control her and like make her do some stuff, but she has like good willpower, so like a lot of the time she can like fight back. So honestly, it's not a big deal. And Cordelia was married to James. She is married to James Harrendal. It's a marriage of convenience because something that happened in Chain of Gold, like James committed arson or something. I don't know. It was, I could be remembering this completely wrong. They're like, what are you talking about? James committed arson. I don't know, but it was a marriage of convenience, but they were like kind of in love. But then Cordelia sees James with Grace Blackthorn, who has like seduction abilities, so she's been sent by her mom, her evil mom Tatiana, to try to like re-seduce James, but he's like not having it. But to Cordelia, it kind of looks like he's like eloping with Grace behind her back. So she's like, oh my god, he's cheating on me. So she runs to Matthew, James's best friend and Cordelia's good friend. And Matthew's like, let's go to Paris. Okay, let's just go. So they go to Paris. They're real responsible of them. They don't tell like anyone. They just run away to Paris. And James, meanwhile, was not eloping with Grace. He was like, Grace, you did a bad thing. You need to turn yourself in. Because you did some nasty stuff. You nasty girl. That's not what he said. But so she turns herself in for basically seducing a ton of people. She committed a few crimes. It's whatever. And what about the side romances? I was going to talk about them, but they're not really that relevant. Lucy, James's sister and Cordelia's best friend, is in love with Ghost Jessie, but Ghost Jessie is only half ghost. So she's like, I'm going to necromance Ghost Jessie. So she goes and she finds his dead body, and she necromances him, and now he's alive with the help of Warlock Malcolm Fade, who we might remember from the Dark Artifices. He was evil there. Okay, so cool. That's what happened. If you're not following, I'm so sorry, okay? I hope you can still have a good time. So now we're into Chain of Thorns. I read Chain of Thorns in the span of around 10 days. I actually made the most progress like the last 4 days because I realized that I had to get this video out. It's easy to read. It's a YA book. It's fun. It's a good time, which is what a YA book should be. Some YA books don't understand that. Lightlark. Okay. Not naming names, but Lightlark. Okay. God, I'm so salty. So, I read this book in quarters. I basically read a quarter of the book and then I'd type out some notes, type out my thoughts, type out like the summary. So we're going to start with the first quarter. So the book begins and Cordelia and Matthew are in Paris. They're just hanging out together and they're kind of falling in love a little bit. Cordelia receives like an ominous warning, like, they're basically like, somebody's like, they wake. She's like, oh my god, what wakes? She accidentally wields a weapon and Lilith shows up. Lilith doesn't really do anything. She's just like, hey, I exist, and then she goes away. Meanwhile, James, Will, and Magnus Bane, they're looking for Lucy. Lucy is on the run. She's a bit of a criminal. She just necromanced Jesse. Necromancy is not cool by Shadowhunter standards. But she's like, okay. She's like, I'm off the hook, you know? He was already like halfway alive anyway, so I didn't really do anything. So they find her, they're like, okay, it's whatever. We'll just bring Jesse back to Shadowhunter Society because Lucy's in love with Jesse and he seems chill. He seems like a chill guy, so that, okay, you're just gonna, we'll just bring you back. I'm sure it's fine. And then, after they do this, James is like, I should go find Matthew and Cordelia, see what's going on with them. So he portals to Paris. Bad move by him, because Matthew and Cordelia are kind of falling in love. They're making out. They're doing that thing where they're like slowly making out, but then like, let's get to the apartment, and they're making out as they're going to the apartment, and then they like collapse into their apartment, and they start like, they're about to have sex, and then someone in the apartment turns on a light. And it's James. James broke into their apartment to see if they were alive, and they were about to have sex. So that's really cool, because Cordelia is still James's wife. So yeah, it's dramatic. There's a lot of drama. It's like a soap opera. So James is like, oh my god, you know what? It's fine. Whatever you want, you know, whatever you want, Cordelia. It's whatever. And Cordelia's feeling kind of bad. And then they also realize that Matthew has relapsed into alcoholism. I mean, he was always an alcoholic. Okay, so Matthew's whole thing is that he's an alcoholic. And one of the reasons that Cordelia agreed to go with Matthew to Paris is because Matthew was like, hey, if you go with me to Paris, we can hang out. You can like get not depressed and I can stop being an alcoholic. So Cordelia basically only agreed to do that because she thought that Matthew was going to stop drinking, and he didn't because he's an alcoholic. So Cordelia's mad at both of them now. She's mad at James for cheating, and she's mad at Matthew for faking not drinking. So yeah. And then James just brings Matthew and Cordelia back to Paris because some shit's going down. Ariane, we'll just call her Ari. Ari and Anna are the side lesbian romance. They got some drama too. Ari, last book, Anna like swore off romance for some reason and they were a little bit mad at each other. But now Ari has realized that her father, the council, I think he's the council, sorry, my eyeshadow looks crazy uneven. So Ari has realized that her father, who's the Inquisitor, the Council, I kind of forgot, he's a high-ranking Shadowhunter guy, and he's blackmailing someone. She finds a blackmail letter, she's like, oh, that's not good. So she runs away from home, and she's like, Anna, please, let me live with you. Let's just be roommates. And Anna was like, okay, sure, even though they're both, like, kind of in love with each other, it's whatever. So they're doing that, and Alistair and Thomas hide Cortana. Cortana is Cordelia's sword, which it has magical abilities, and it's the only sword that is able to do harm to James and Lucy's demon grandfather, Belial? I'm just gonna call him Belial. God, I'm gonna get made fun of. Okay, so, yeah. That's the setup, basically, and you're like, that's the setup, that's 25% of the book. Yeah. This book is, I don't know if you could tell, this is a very large book. This book is nearly 800 pages long, so this all happens in the first 200 pages, and all it does is basically successfully get all the characters back in London. It basically sets everything up. You know, Ari's living with Anna, Alistair and Thomas are kind of buddy-buddy now. I mean, they're the side, like, gay romance, you know? They have the side lesbian romance, they have the side, you know? So they're getting closer. I mean, they were already close. They had some drama before. Like, Alistair was like, we can't be together. Basically, he's like, really, he has no self-worth and he thinks he doesn't deserve to be happy. So he's like, we can't be together because I don't deserve to be happy. But now apparently he thinks he does because they're hanging out. So, why did it take Cassandra Clare 200 pages to set up this book? Because there are like 12 characters. I counted. The characters are Cordelia, James, Matthew, Lucy, Jesse, the ghost that Lucy resurrected, Grace, the one who is trying to seduce James, but like it's because her mom's evil, not her. She's kind of like just a weapon in this. Thomas, Alistair, Christopher, the nerd scientist man, and Anna and Ariadne. And there's one more. So these 12 characters all have the potential to have a POV paragraph slash like third of a chapter. Basically the POV switch around, but not per chapter, just like every few paragraphs there's a new POV, which I'm honestly fine with because all these characters, Cassandra Clare's good at making a very like well-rounded cast of characters where you can always pick out a few that you like and then kind of ignore the other ones. I honestly don't have a solution because I feel like all these characters, they all seem important. They all seem like people care about them, so I'm not suggesting cutting any of them, but I do feel like you should pick a few that are important and like discard of the rest. I don't know, it seems almost unavoidable. Like I have no real solution to this. It's just something to think about, like just the huge amount of characters in this book. Maybe that's why this book is 800 pages. Who knows? Another note I had, after reading the first quarter, I couldn't stop thinking about how good the dialogue is. Cassandra Clare writes really good banter for her characters. They just really bounce off each other, you know? And it's that kind of dialogue where when you're reading alone, you kind of whisper to yourself, and I whisper it to myself like in a British accent because they're in London, right? So I just really like it. Like the dialogue, when they're not doing like serious stuff, the dialogue during the serious stuff is like expositional, kind of boring, but when they're just like chilling together, they're just being friends, it's a really good time. Let's move into the second quarter of the book. So this is around like 200 to 400 pages. This is when it starts getting, it certainly does. So everyone has gathered back in London. Cordelia goes to see her mom. She's like, hey mom, her mom is pregnant. And she's like, hey, so BTW, I want to move to Tehran. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Tehran. I said that right. Because, you know, their dad just died. I forgot to tell you this. Their alcoholic dad, Elias, got whacked last book. Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like a big deal at the time because he was an alcoholic and nobody liked him. He was like he was weirdly abusive, ? I don't know. Yeah, so the mom's like, okay, since your dad's dead, we honestly have no connection in London anymore, so I kind of just want to move. And Alistair, Cordelia's brother, is like, sure, yeah. And then Cordelia just doesn't really react, which is weird because, like, all your friends are in London. Like, Cordelia, I guess, just assumes that Alistair is going to go with her mom, and then Cordelia can stay here with all her friends. So that was weird. This honestly isn't a huge part of the book, but it's just, like, a thing that I was thinking about. I'm like, isn't that, like, a huge change? Like, you can't move out. You just got here. The crew, once they're all back in London, they decide to go break into the Blackthorn home because Tatiana is at large. Grace's evil mom, Grace and Jesse's, Jesse the ghost and Grace the seduction person, their evil mom is on the run, she's on the loose. They're like, oh my god, let's just break into her house, see what they missed, see if we can find any clues on like what the hell she was doing, because she was messing with some demon stuff. She was in league with James and Lucy's evil demon grandfather, who was trying to possess James. So they're like, okay, let's see if we can find any clues about whatever the hell is going on. So they break into the Blackthorn house and they take a look around. And in the house, they find like a mirror thing, like in the fireplace. That's weird. They take it back and they're like, I think you can see like demons in with this mirror or something. I don't know. And James is like, here, because I have demon grandfather blood, I'll just take a look in the mirror. So he takes a little peek and he's like, yeah, there are demons in here. You can see his evil demon grandfather, Belial, summoning up a bunch of chimera demons. And he clarifies that this is important because chimera demons possess people. So now we know that Belial is up to no good. He's trying to possess a lot of people. So they're like, what the hell's going on? So the crew, specifically just the dudes, the bros, the merry thieves, that's their friend group name. They're trying to help Matthew stop being an alcoholic because that's kind of important. They're like, Matthew, we wish you weren't an alcoholic. I'm really good at this. So they just give him like something that he needs to drink every so often and not have alcohol, and then he can drink that thing and it'll just like stop him from being an alcoholic. So that's really cool. Yeah. This is so stupid. Okay. So Jesse, who has been resurrected by Lucy, is like, let me go see my sister Grace. Grace is his adoptive sister who after Jesse died, Grace was used by their evil mom to kind of like seduce a bunch of men and get the mom what she wanted, Tatiana Blackthorn, the mom. So Grace is being held in the Silent City, basically Shadowhunter jail. James had her turn herself in for her crimes, so Jesse's like, hey, let me go talk to my sister. So he pulls up and he's like, hey Grace, nice to see you, and Grace is like, I gotta tell you some shit. So he sits down and she's like, so basically, I put that bracelet on James. Basically, this is a bit of a rehashing, but James was too in love with Cordelia. So, but Grace needed to like seduce James to bring him closer to his demon grandfather so that the demon grandfather could possess him. So Tatiana, the evil mom, in league with the demon grandfather, is like, Grace, use your seduction abilities and this magic necklace to go get James, like, in love with you. So she's like, okay, slay, whatever, I'm a child. So she goes and, like, puts it on James' wrist, and then now he's, like, in love with her. They needed the bracelet because he's too in love with Cordelia, so she can't just use her normal, ability. She needs, like, an amplifier. So he's wearing the bracelet, and for a while he was, like, in love with her. Like, many years, actually. So he had, like, no free will. If you think about it, it's, like, kind of assaulty. Like, it's not looking good for Grace. So Grace is like, yeah, I did that. I'm so sorry. And Jesse, like, he looks like he's about to vomit, and he runs away. And Grace is like, well, shit. So that didn't go well. So yeah, honestly, I thought the scene was well written. Like, I was kind of sad for Grace. I have always been a Grace sympathizer. I think Grace is the one on the cover of this book, actually. That's kind of crazy. I know they just wanted a blonde girl because they did Cordelia and Lucy, and now they're like, oh, Grace, sure, she's the only other relevant female character with long hair. Because Anna has short hair, so they can't do the flowy thing. So yeah. This scene, it kind of broke me. Like, I wasn't, like, gonna cry or anything, but I was like, damn, that sucks. You've been so sad and miserable without your brother, and he's finally back. And when he comes to see you, he's disgusted by your actions and he runs away. Like, that's awful. Okay, so meanwhile, Cordelia is like, I'm gonna go try to summon demons. I forgot the reasoning, but she went to go do that. She goes out into the street. She's like, I'm a paladin of Lilith. You can't hurt me. But, like, the demons are too dumb to understand her and start attacking her. And then James shows up, and he has, like, a magic gun. I'm about to go on a tangent here, but James has a magic gun. And Christopher, the scientist character, made this gun for James. And it can kill demons, which is weird because, like, the reason they use, like, swords and stuff is because guns can't kill demons, but this one can because there's some special runes on it, and due to James' demon blood, due to his evil demon grandfather, he can fire the gun and kill some demons. So James pulls up with his gun, and it states that on the side of the gun there is an inscription, and it's a Bible verse. So you're like, what's the big deal, Justine? And I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. Is there a God in these Cassandra Clare books? Like, is God canon? That's a really weird sentence, but like, there are angels and demons, like, for real. Like, they're actually real. Like, you can see them, you can kill them, they exist. But is there a God? There's a Bible, because there's a Bible verse. But is there a God? That's my question. And, like, you know what I mean? I encountered a while ago this video by the YouTuber The Authentic Observer, where she explains why one of the reasons why Cassandra Clare books are weak. Honestly, I agree with a lot of her points, but I don't agree with her entirely, because I feel like there's value to a book that doesn't really have like a theme to it. Like, it could just be a fun book. But she explains that one of the failings of Cassandra Clare books is a failing to establish the existence of God. And you're like, okay, at first I was like, well, that doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, this is a fictional world. Why do I care if God exists? But I'm starting to care if God exists. Because why would you put a Bible verse on the side of a gun? And you know that angels exist. You know that demons exist, vampires, werewolves. You know that, like, a lot of things in the Bible exist. Does God exist? Nobody has ever mentioned the existence of God, like, for realsies. It's just interesting. Like, it almost took me out of the story, because I was like, hold up, Bible verse, you know? I don't know, it's just something that I feel like Cassandra Clare should establish. You know, I think the reason she doesn't want to do it is because she doesn't want to upset, you know, people who aren't religious, and I'm not a religious person. I don't think God exists, but I wouldn't be mad if Cassandra Clare was like, oh, in my books, God exists. Because I think that's important to establish in your story. You know, I need to know if God exists, because there are angels. It looks like you're making everything in the Bible exist, but no mention of God. Also, Lucifer exists. Yeah, isn't Lucifer Satan? I'm so confused. Like, what a great, like, not like, I don't know. Imagine if, like, God showed up in a Cassandra Clare book and he was like a villain or something and they had to, like, fight God. Like, am I the only one who thinks that'd be kind of epic? Okay, whatever. Sorry. I kind of went off on a tangent, but let me continue the summary here. So, Cordelia is summoning these demons. They're trying to kill her. James shows up with his gun with the Bible verse on the side of it. He blows up the demons. He's like, oh my god, I can't believe you did that. He's so mad. So after James saves Cordelia, they go back to, like, their house, and James is, like, really mad. Okay, honestly, this is a great scene. Okay, Cassandra Clare writes really good, like, love confessions. And James has, like, he has a really good one here, where he's like, hurt me, do anything you want to me, but do not harm yourself. Please, never. And I was like, oh my god. I don't know, it was just good. Okay, what can I say? What can I say? You did good, Cassandra Clare. You got me. Usually, I'm not, like, huge into dramatic love confessions, but that one was pretty good. Like, he's so emotional. She's like, oh my god, I didn't know he felt that way. Like, it's good, okay? So, yeah, you might be wondering, what's going on with James and Matthew right now? Because, like, Matthew is in love with Cordelia. James is in love with Cordelia. This hasn't really affected James and Matthew's, like, friendship too much. Like, it did in the beginning, but then they're like, we shouldn't fight. Let me help you get over your alcoholism. And now they're all good. So now Cordelia's kind of, like, picking, but everyone knows she's going to pick James. Like, James and Cordelia are very, very endgame. Honestly, Matthew was kind of just thrown in there. I never really got a sense that Matthew was into Cordelia or Cordelia was into Matthew until, like, the beginning of this book, where I'm like, okay, I guess they are. Like, I almost feel bad for Matthew. Like, he was done really dirty, I feel like. They gave him no love interest except for Cordelia, who we know isn't going to choose him. He's an alcoholic. Like, Matthew's going through it, okay? I feel bad for him. And Christopher, the science dude, visits Grace in the prison. So Christopher and Grace had some sort of connection in the last book. They only had like one scene together, but they shared a mutual love for science. Women in STEM, girl boss. So Christopher visits Grace in prison a lot to be like, hey, look over my notes. You know, you're my only sciencey friend. And it's implied that there's like a bit of a, spark between them. And honestly, it's really cute. Okay, I'll say it. I shipped Grace and Christopher really, really hard because they were really cute together. And I just think Grace deserves the best. I know she's like kind of bad, but it's a circumstance of like her upbringing. It's not really like she's a bad person, And around here, when Christopher is visiting Grace, here is when I did the incest test. So you might be like, Justine, what the hell's the incest test? Let me tell you. So Cassandra Clare has a history of writing incest. She just likes it. That sounds really bad, but she just writes it a lot. Like in the Mortal Instruments, Clary and Jace thought they were siblings for like 3 books, which was weird, but they were still into each other. Emma was basically adopted into the Blackthorn family, but Julian and Emma still got together, even though they basically lived as siblings for a long time. Alec had a huge crush on Jace, even though Jace was his adoptive brother. There's just like a lot of incest going on. So I was like, okay, if Cassandra Clare wants to use the same families like all the time, like she just uses the same families over and over, like Carstairs, Blackthorn, Harrenhal, Fairchild, like all these families are like connected all the time. So I'm like, so there's got to be some sort of incest going on, right? Because the kids, the teenagers here in the last hours, they're the kids of the characters in the Infernal Devices, and now they're getting together, so you're like, oh, gotta make sure there's no familial overlap. So I drew out my little family tree, and as I was drawing, I came to a revelation. This book does not pass the incest test. Or it passes it, whatever you're testing for. Are you testing for no incest or incest? I guess it passes it because I was testing for incest, and I found it. Christopher is the son of Gabriel and Cecily, and guess who Gabriel's sister is? Tatiana. So Tatiana's daughter is Grace. Adoptive daughter, though. Adoptive daughter. So they're not like blood related, but like, come on. That's still weird, right? So I was like, holy crap, like it would do Cassandra Clare some good to do the incest test before publishing books. Because she probably could have tried to explain this away, be like, oh, Christopher never knew Grace was, Tatiana's daughter. I don't know. I feel like because she's adoptive, you could have gotten away with it a little bit, but because I feel like Christopher has always been aware that Grace was his cousin, and now they're just falling for each other, like, that's weird, right? They're literally cousins. It's not too helpful that she's adoptive. Or you could think that Cassandra Clare saw this coming. She always knew she wanted to pair Grace and Christopher together, but she realized that it didn't pass the incest, or it did pass the incest test. Gotta make up the rules of the incest test like more clear. So she was like purposely made Grace adoptive, and you also get the benefits of letting Grace be blonde while the Blackthorns have dark hair. Okay, basically, there's a bit of incest here. Unaddressed incest. Interesting. Is it bad that I'll say I don't mind it too much? I don't mind it too much, okay? Because out of all the relationships, Grace and Christopher's is like the least defined. Out of all the couples, they're the ones they like barely touch, they never kiss, they basically have, they have like a bit of romantic tension, but it's not as like, so like tense as all the other couples, so honestly I'm fine with it. She's adopted. Oh my god, I'm like an incest apologist. Like, I don't think this is okay, but also, I'm looking over it. I'm looking the other way, because I think the relationship is really cute. Yo, I'm gonna get freaking canceled. I haven't even gotten started. Next plot point. Christmas party! Yay! I love it when they throw parties. I just love parties. I love parties in these books because Cassandra Clare is great at writing parties. So, they're throwing a Christmas party. Weird thing about this Christmas party, there's a weapons tree. This weapons tree comes in handy later on, but like it's weird. They're like they couldn't find a tree, so they like put a bunch of weapons together and made a tree. It's giving like I think Balenciaga had that like tree made up of like denim or something. I just wanted to mention that because that's really weird. So basically, at this Christmas party, we get like an update on everyone. So Lucy and Jessie. Jessie is getting settled well. Everybody likes Jessie. Jessie's friends with everyone now. Weird thing that I'm gonna bring up right now, just so I don't forget later. But Cassandra Clare likes to keep reminding you that her characters are hot by having less hot characters hit on them. So they have Cordelia and Alistair like walk into a bar, and the barkeep is immediately like, "Oh my god, who is that? Who is this handsome man?" And it's Alistair, and he's like all flustered, and he's like, "What is going on?" He obviously does not find her attractive because he's gay. But so you're like, this added nothing to the plot. Why was that there? Just to remind me that nobody's ever hit on me because I'm not hot? I know, weird. And then you're like, okay, that was a weird one-off thing. And then it happens again. It happened to Jessie twice. They have Jessie just walk into the Herondale household, and they have the maid like aggressively hitting on Jessie. By the way, what age is the maid? Isn't the maid like middle-aged? Is she allowed to be doing that? Okay, so they have the maid like Effie aggressively hitting on Jessie, and it adds nothing to the plot, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that Jessie was hot. I actually did remember that. Thanks for reminding me. And then they do it to Jessie again at the Christmas party when Jessie shows up, and they're like, they're introducing Jessie to everyone because he's like a new guy. They have a side character who is not described as attractive go up to Jessie and be like, "Oh my god, who are you? Wow, you are so attractive. You are so fine." And then Jessie's just sitting there, and he's oblivious because he's so humble and he doesn't realize how attractive he is. So yeah, that was weird. It adds nothing to the plot once again. So they just have these 3 random scenes where there's a girl character who is not described as being attractive hitting on a guy character who is described as being attractive. Just to remind you how attractive these characters are. So anyway, back to Lucy and Jessie at the Christmas party. Lucy and Jessie have realized that every time they're trying to make out, which they're trying to do a lot now because Jessie has been resurrected and now they can make out, and Lucy's very excited about it. So every time they make out, Lucy like descends into the shadow realm, and she's like seeing demons or something, like what James saw when he looked in that random mirror. What happened to that mirror? I don't know. So, yeah. That's weird. So Lucy's getting a little bit concerned. She goes to Malcolm, who helped her necromance Jessie in the first place, and she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "Okay, this could be bad. You know, whenever you make out with Jessie, it could be like bringing you closer to your evil demon grandfather." And she's like, "Well, I don't want that." So she's just like, "Jessie, I don't think we can make out anymore." And then, honestly, it seemed to only happen when they were aggressively making out, but she's like, "We can't touch." So they're like dancing, and they're doing the thing where they're like, their hands aren't actually, here's the pic. There are a lot of pics in here, but this is them. Can you see that? They're like not touching. They're like, "We must dance, but we cannot touch." So they do that, but I'm like, you guys definitely could have touched, you know? It only happened when you were like halfway to sex. So like, I don't think you guys can probably hold hands. I don't know. Just, okay. So, yeah. Now they can't make out. This is very frustrating for them. So, Anna and Ariadne, who are roommates now, they were roommates, they're at the ball too, and it's like, "Dance with me." And Ari's like, okay, they're in love with each other. I don't know what the drama was all about. Just be together. So they dance. Nobody judges them. They're just dancing. Cool. Nice. I don't know. And then, side note, Anna has been helping Ari move out of her house secretly by like sneaking into the house when her parents aren't there, because like she like secretly moved out because she doesn't like that her dad's blackmailing someone. So they go in and they grab the parrot. There's like this parrot character. He's so funny, Winston the parrot. Oh my god. By the way, Winston was like my go-to like animal/stuffed animal name. I don't know why, but I really appreciate that Cassandra Clare wrote in Winston the parrot for me. Thank you, Cassie. Thanks. Thomas and Alistair seem to be comfortable together. I don't know what all the drama was about. All these gay characters need to get it together, because, like, what are they angsting over? They seem comfortable together. They're just hanging out. They're chilling. So they're about to make out, but they don't. Because of something that happens later, which I will explain after we catch up with everybody. Oh my god, what am I talking about? So, at this party, a lot of this stuff is going on at this party. This is a very hectic, happening party. This is the place to be. So, Cordelia's like, Matthew, let me talk to you, Matthew. She's obviously, like, gonna break up with him. So she's like, hey, you know, I really care for you. I think you're really great, but I don't think I'm really in love with you. You know what I mean? And he's like, I can't stand this anymore. And he, like, runs out of the room, and it's, like, not cute. And Cordelia is crying, and she's like, I can't believe I just did that to Matthew. Oh my god, I feel so bad. But she doesn't really admit that she loves James. She's just like, I don't think I love you, Matthew. I really care for you, but I don't think I love you. So, now the disturbance. This is where the plot gets heavy. So, at the Christmas party, everybody's doing all this shit, and then something crazy happens. Tatiana, crazy mom of Grace and Jesse, who is in league with evil demon grandfather, shows up, and she, like, portals in or something. Like, we don't know where she came from. We thought she was being arrested. We thought she was in jail already, but she isn't. She's clearly here. So, and she grabs the child. The child is Christopher and Anna's youngest brother, Alexander. He's like a 3-year-old. She grabs him. She's like, I'm gonna kill this child, so don't come any closer. Don't attack me. I'm threatening this child right now. And also, BTW. Yeah, Tessa and Will, they're probably in league with Belial. God, I can't say this man's name. They're probably in league with Evil Demon Grandfather, because Evil Demon Grandfather is Tessa's father. That's how he became Evil Demon Grandfather. So, apparently nobody knew this. Everybody's like, oh my god, that's bad, because Evil Demon Grandfather is like a very powerful prince of hell. So it's generally frowned upon to be related to this guy. So they're like, that's a little bit, because Will and Tessa are running the Institute right now, which is like, very most important Shadowhunter place in London. So they're like, everyone's like, should we let them be doing that? So, I don't know why they're believing Tatiana over these people, but she just came to say that, and then she disappears and takes the child with her, and everybody's like, holy shit, we gotta look for her. And that's the end of the second quarter of the book. So we're around halfway now, and it's getting juicy. I honestly feel like the first half of the book was just kind of like setup and like rehashing where everyone was. And yeah. A quick reminder I wrote in the stock. Christopher and Grace are cousins. I already said that like 3 separate times. Cool. Third quarter of the book. This is around like 400 to like almost 600, around there. So the crew goes to save Alexander. They just go out and they look for him and they find him. And Tatiana, the evil mom, is like about to kill him, but they get there just in time and they save him. There's this scene, she's like, this is good, she's like sitting there, she's like torturing him with a rune. You can't put runes on children, they're gonna get like killed. Runes are like what make Shadowhunters. So he's like screaming in agony, and then Anna, I actually really like this moment for Anna, because Anna and Christopher are Alexander's older siblings, and Anna's the oldest. So Anna shows up and she's like screaming, she's so mad, and she's like, get your hands off of him. And Tatiana turns, she like whirls around and she throws that baby. She like underhands him, kind of chucks him into the air, and Anna's like, holy shit. She like grabs the child. I guess he's fine. And then she's like, everyone after her. She like jumps out a window. They're chasing her down the street. They get her, and then she stops and she's like, oh my god, Jesse, you've been necromanced. Oh my god, my son, come to my side with the evil demon grandfather. And drinking game, take a shot every time I say evil demon grandfather. And Jesse's like, obviously no, you're obviously evil. You just freaking tossed that baby into the air. And she's like, okay, you know what? Screw you. I'm disowning you. You know what? Just arrest me. So they arrest her, and they're getting suspicious. They're like, that was kind of easy, but whatever, I guess. So turns out the reason Tatiana even got there in the first place was because Tatiana in jail was never Tatiana, and it was a demon. So you're like, something fishy's going on. There are a lot of demons out here. It's getting weird. So they have like a meeting, like an entire Shadowhunter Society, London Shadowhunters meeting, where they're like, should Tessa and Will be allowed to run the Institute? Because like they're related to the evil demon grandfather, and they like never told anybody. Like that seems kind of suspicious, right? Basically, all our characters that we care about are like, yeah, obviously, we know they aren't in league with the evil demon grandfather. Tessa just happens to be a little bit related to him. It's whatever. And then Charles, Matthew's brother and Alistair's former lover, he was kind of like an asshole in the last 2 books, but he shows up and he backs Bridgestock, Ariadne's dad, who, remember, in the beginning of the book, we saw that he's blackmailing someone. And Charles is uncharacteristically backing Bridgestock, and he's like, yeah, get Tessa and Will out of here. They're demon sympathizers. And everybody's like, what? Like, why would he say that? Obviously, flashback to the blackmail note. During this meeting, for some reason, Christopher thinks it's a good idea to go take Cordelia, and he's like, Cordelia, come here, let's go. I gotta show you something. So he runs Cordelia all the way to the Silent City, where Grace is being held, and he's like, Grace, tell Cordelia what you told me. So Grace is like, hey, Cordelia, so the reason why it kind of looked like James was in love with me was because I had him under, like, a love spell. So, like, he had to be in love with me, but in reality, he was just in love with you for, like, a really long time. And it was honestly really hard to seduce him. He just loved you so much. So, like, yeah, that's on me. I had him under a love spell for, like, a few years. Yeah, he's been in love with you the whole time. He never cheated on you with me. And Cordelia's like, holy shit! It is, like, a big... She, like, runs. And then, this is a very dramatic scene. She's like running through the rain. She's like, oh my god, James has been my true love this whole time. Like we didn't know that. And she mentions that as she's running, she's like dropping hairpins just like out of her hair. She has like huge hair. It's just, she's dropping topaz hairpins. That's like an actual jewel. So I researched topaz prices, and it's like a relatively cheap stone in comparison to like, I don't know, something more expensive like sapphires or something. But like depending on the color, it can actually be like a lot more expensive. So depending on the color of topaz hairpins, Cordelia could have been losing a lot of money. Just, I mean, like, wow, I've never been so in love with someone that I'm out here just like throwing money onto the streets because I want to get to them so fast. You know what I mean? Like, maybe just stop and pick up your hairpins. Maybe take your hairpins out for a sec and then start running. I don't know. She even mentions, she's like, I hope a beggar finds it and, like, makes good use of it. I'm like, or you could just give your hairpin to a beggar instead of, I don't know, just weird detail. Like, why didn't she stop to pick those up? Why did she even mention that they were falling out? Like, I don't know. Like, those aren't cheap. So anyway, Cordelia makes it to James, and she's like, oh my god, James, I'm in love with you. I just realized that you've been in love with me this entire time. You should have just told me that in the first place. That's what I've been saying. And James is like, I just didn't want your pity. Because he's the main character. He doesn't want anyone's pity anymore. So, yay, everything's fine. They're in love with each other. They have sex. Yay. They take a bath. And then they have sex again in the bathtub. Yay. Cassandra Clare writes really, like, fade to black sex, but, like, it's still interesting. So, anyway, all the adults go to Idris, which is the Shadowhunter capital, to, like, defend the Herondals. Basically, every adult who's relevant goes there, so they leave all their children, like, adultless, because they gotta go, like, defend the Herondals and keep the Institute or whatever. So they leave Charles in charge, the guy who just went against them, Matthew's brother, and everyone is living in the Institute just for, like, safety reasons, and so Matthew, Alistair, and Thomas go up to Charles, and remember, Alistair is Charles's former lover, and the way that Charles is getting blackmailed is he doesn't want anyone to know he's gay because he thinks that that's going to ruin his, like, political chances, which honestly it might. I don't really know Shadowhunter politics. So, they confront Charles. They're like, you just gotta not give in to the blackmail. Like, you're doing a bad thing. They make a very compelling argument. And they're, like, pissed. And Charles is like, I don't know if I can do that, you know? Like, I just care about, like, my political career too much. And they're like, you're a coward, whatever the hell. And then Alistair's like, he's very distraught by this for some reason. So, side note, Alistair, my favorite character in the entire series, gets, like, 0 POVs this book. Every single time Alistair has an important story beat, it's told through somebody else's, like, eyes. Like, in this case, where Alistair is desperately trying to get Charles to confess that he's being blackmailed and that he doesn't actually back the Herondals. Thomas is looking at Alistair and be like, wow, Alistair looks really distraught. And I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if it was an Alistair POV? You could think, and we could see what Alistair is thinking. But no, I don't know why we can't get an Alistair POV. So Alistair's, like, very distraught by this. After they fail to force Charles to stop giving into blackmail, Alistair's like, let's go on a carriage ride together, Thomas. And Thomas is like, okay, whatever, because he's really in love with Alistair. And they go on a carriage ride. They realize that, like, the sky's getting dark and it's getting kind of suspicious, but they start making out anyway. They're, like, halfway about to have sex, and then they realize that there's something very wrong. Here's the something that's very wrong. Grace is in the Silent City still. She's been in jail for, like, the majority of the book at this point. And Tatiana was just arrested, right? So they took Tatiana to the Silent City, which is a bad idea because her freaking daughter's there, and Grace basically needs a restraining order. But Tatiana breaks out of her cell somehow and goes to Grace, breaks into Grace's cell, and she's like, hey, Grace, my beautiful daughter, you freaking failed me. And she's with, like, a suspicious-looking Silent Brother. The Silent Brothers are, like, the police, ? Of, like, the Shadowhunter world. They're always wearing cloaks. They have, like, their mouths and eyes sewn shut, and they, like, only talk in thoughts. It's really weird. So, she's with the suspicious-looking Silent Brother. He's looking kind of demonic, if you will. And Grace is like, oh my god, help me, and nobody's helping her. And she's like, something's very wrong. And Tatiana is like, I'm taking away your seduction powers. And the Silent Brother takes away her seduction powers. She's screaming in agony. Cut to black. Next scene, Grace is running to the Institute. She's barefoot. She clearly just escaped prison. She's like, hold up, guys. I know you guys don't like me because I kind of, like, seduced James or whatever. But something bad is happening. Like, Tatiana just broke out of prison. There's suspicious, demonic-looking Silent Brothers. Like, guys, there's something wrong. And then right when she says that, there's a little knock at the door. And they look outside. And it's Tatiana and, like, a ginormous army of, like, Silent Brother demon things. And they're like, hey, come out, guys. So then they have to begin the battle, right? So they come out of the freaking Institute, guns a-blazing. I mean, only one person has a gun a-blazing, that's James. Everybody else has, like, swords and cool stuff. So they come out, and they're fighting these demonic Silent Brothers, but they quickly realize that they're very, very strong, and they're like zombies. Like, they're zombified. It's explained later that how these things work is that Belial, remember when James looked into that weird mirror thing and he saw the chimera demons being summoned and those, like, possess things? Well, it turns out they were being summoned so they could possess the dead bodies of, like, previous Silent Brothers. So they're, like, basically Silent Brother zombies. So they, like, keep getting back up. It's not looking good for, it's not looking good for the crew, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, they're not doing well. In the struggle, Christopher gets whacked. Christopher is dead. Which, like, you're like, holy shit, Justine, it's almost like I never really knew Christopher that well. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I feel like Cassandra Clare does this thing where the only characters she ever kills off are characters that she doesn't really care that much about and were never well developed in the first place. Like, Christopher had a lot of potential. He had a lot of great connections with other characters, and he just got killed off. Like, no mercy, absolutely no mercy, just killed. And I think that was a bad move on Cassandra Clare's part. I think that was a bad move on Cassandra Clare's part, because I feel like it could have been more emotional if we knew Christopher better, if Christopher and Grace's relationship had been developed better, if, I don't know, just if a lot of things. Not gonna lie, I was emotional, mainly based off, like, lost potential. There was a lot of stuff about Christopher and Grace specifically that I feel like we hadn't explored yet, and it was just very upsetting to me. So, Christopher gets killed. I'm going to talk a bit more about this later, but Cassandra Clare is very bad at writing grief. So, anyway, Christopher gets killed. Everybody's pissed. And Grace runs up to Lucy, and Lucy's whole thing is that she has, like, weird ghost summoning powers due to her evil demon grandfather. Evil demon grandfather moment. And Grace is like, Lucy, you gotta summon Tatiana's old husband and Jesse's dad, Rupert Blackthorn. So Lucy's like, holy shit, okay, why didn't I think of that? I'll just do that. So she summons Rupert Blackthorn, Tatiana's husband, who died a while ago. And he's like, Tatiana, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, I'm, like, avenging us. And he's like, no, that's not good. Like, I'm renouncing you. I don't like you. This is, like, a bad thing. And she's like, oh my god, for real? And she, like, stops the Silent Brothers from doing their zombie business. And then she flees into the night, and Grace and Cordelia give chase. Grace and Cordelia catch up to her, and there's a struggle ensues, and in the struggle, Cordelia accidentally picks up a blade. She's not allowed to do that because Lilith is going to show up and do something. So Lilith shows up. She's like, hey, girl, you're my paladin. Kill her. Kill Tatiana. Because Lilith's whole thing is that she also kind of wants to kill Belial, the evil demon grandfather. Yo, if anyone's playing that drinking game where they're taking a shot every time I say evil demon grandfather, like, check yourself into the emergency room. I'm worried for you. So, Tatiana is just standing there, and Lilith is like, Cordelia, kill her. She's a pawn for Belial. We all hate Belial. Kill her. And Cordelia's like, no, I have to have mercy, you know? But then Cordelia, like, gets a vision of, like, Christopher dying. Like, they gave chase before it was confirmed that Christopher was dead. And she, like, I think Lilith gives her this vision that, like, Christopher's dead. And Christopher's her friend, so she's not feeling merciful anymore. She cuts Tatiana's throat. She dissolves into ashes. So Cordelia and Grace run back to the Institute. It's in chaos. Christopher's freaking dead. Alistair and Thomas just show up now. Remember, they took that little carriage ride. This is so embarrassing for them. Like, they were about to have sex, and as they were probably about to have sex and making out, Christopher was probably dying. Like, that's really rough for them. That's really embarrassing. So they show up, and they're like, oh my god, what happened? Yeah, that's the big question here, right? So when Cordelia returns, Alistair and Thomas are there, and they're like, oh my god, there's something really wrong with the mundanes and the downworlders in this freaking town in London. They realize that all the mundanes are, like, on NPC mode. All the mundanes are, like, the people who aren't shadow hunters and aren't downworlders, like a vampire. They're just normal humans. They're on NPC mode. They're just, like, standing around. They're not really doing anything. They don't react when you try to talk to them. It's really weird. So Belial shows up, and he possesses a few of these mundanes, and he's like, hey, I'm taking over London, BT dubs. Also, James, come with me, I'm trying to possess you. And James like, no. But he starts, like, killing mundanes, and James is like, okay, stop it, I'll come with you. I'm like, selfless. So, as he's getting portaled away by Belial, his bestie, Matthew, runs up and, like, grabs him. So they both get portaled away. They're both going to hell. Like, literally. And then everybody else is just standing there. And now I'm gonna talk about grief. So, am I the only one who found it weird that when Christopher died, like, nobody screamed in despair? Like, okay. I just realized this now, and I honestly don't know how I didn't catch it before, but the main issue with the way Cassandra Clare writes tragedy and grief, and even, like, emotion in general, is that every time a character is feeling a strong emotion or a character is grieving, it's written from the point of view of a character watching it happen, not the character doing the emotion or doing the grief, you know? Like, for example, when Christopher is confirmed as dead and Anna is cradling him, she's crying, she's obviously very, very distraught. Her brother is dead. That's her little brother. Her little brother is dead. But we don't get Anna's POV. We get Lucy's. And basically, Lucy just walks up and Anna looks up at her and she says, he's dead. So that was a choice. Why did we see that from Lucy's point of view? Like, what was the point of that? And then also, for example, when Thomas pulls up and he realizes that Christopher's dead, he runs to Christopher, he's shaking, he's like, oh my god. But we never get it, we didn't get it from Thomas's point of view. It's Cordelia. It's Cordelia's POV, she's watching Thomas grieve. So, even, this applies to, like, a lot of other emotions, too. Like, why, like, for example, why didn't we get Alistair's POV when he was distraught over Charles giving to blackmail? Like, we got Thomas's instead. It's just, like, why does she write like that? Is she not capable of writing a character's individual emotions? Is she only capable of showing what they look like to an outsider perspective? It's really weird to me, and I feel like that's why a lot of the grieving falls flat. The person feeling the most emotion is never given a proper point of view to, like, dissect it. Even, like, Alistair and Cordelia's dad's death in the last book, they were never given proper time to grieve. Nobody screamed out in despair. I'm not saying that someone has to scream, but, like, not that I want to imagine it, but, like, if my sister died, I'd be shrieking, I'd be screaming, I'd be, like, inconsolable. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be like this. Like, they just sit there, they're like, on to the next thing. Christopher's dead. Whatever. Like, it's really, So, that's my thing about grief, especially, oh my god, even all the way back to her earliest books. City of Glass, her third book she ever wrote for the Mortal Instruments series. When Max Lightwood dies, we see the grieving process from Clary's point of view. Clary is the one character, besides maybe Simon, who had the smallest connection to Max. Like, she sees all her friends go and grieve Max, and she's like, wow, they must feel awful. And I'm like, why are we getting your POV? Why is this important that we are seeing what you're seeing right now? We should be seeing what they're seeing. It's just really interesting to me that Cassandra Clare has chosen to do it that way. I just think that Cassandra Clare's, like, famously bad at writing grief. She's never written it well, and honestly, I don't think she ever will, which really sucks because I feel like this part of the story especially is when shit starts getting serious. Like, it gets emotional, it gets really rough for the characters, and I honestly just want to see them, like, break down. We get, we get, like, a middle chapter after this all happens, and James and Matthew basically get kidnapped to hell, Christopher dies, and we get a chapter called Intermission, Grief. And it's just like a 2-3 page chapter where Cordelia is like, I'm sad. I'm really sad. I don't know. It's weird. And it's weird that we don't get Lucy's POV to explain, like, is she upset that her brother just got taken to hell? I don't know. We don't know because we don't get Lucy's POV. We get Cordelia's, and Cordelia's like, wow, Christopher was a great friend. And we even get Cordelia looking at Thomas, and she's like, I wonder how Thomas feels. It's like, yeah, me too. Like, why are you talking right now? Thomas should be talking. I don't know. It's... Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about this. Anyway, so before Belial, evil demon grandfather, took James and Matthew, he was basically like, here's my evil plan. I want to take over London. Why does he want London so bad? I don't know. The weather there is awful, but he really wants it, and he's like, so what's going to happen is that I'm going to take James and Matthew. He's taking James to possess, and he's taking Matthew just on accident, and he's like, okay, guys, I'm going to open a portal to leave London. It's going to take y'all to Idris. You have 3 days to get out of London, or I'm going to close London off. It's going to become like a demon hellscape. So everyone's like, okay, obviously these people aren't going to leave London. So, because that's where they freaking live. So they're like, okay, whatever. Basically, they all decide that everyone needs to evacuate London, I guess. It's getting really gloomy there because all the mundanes and downworlders are still on NPC mode. So, yeah. That is the end of quarter 3. things are getting serious. Things are getting really rough for our characters. As we enter quarter 4. So we start quarter 4, and James and Matthew wake up in hell. They are in hell. Matthew is going through withdrawal. It's not looking good for him. Not only is he in hell, and the girl friend zoned him, but he's going through withdrawal. So James is trying to help him out, but it's like mixed results. And back in London, basically everybody's like, yeah, no. The crew, our main crew, is like, we can't leave London. We gotta save Matthew and James. So they basically do a fake out, and everybody leaves London except for them. They hide in the Institute. They're starting their master plan to save Matthew and James. So they each like pair up into like their like task teams, which I actually really enjoy. Like Anna and Ariadne, their task is to find a way out of London. So they're like gonna go travel to the Silent City because they heard that there's like a little portal there that they can use. And then Jesse and Grace are teaming up to figure out how to contact the outside world with fire messages, which is the experiment that Christopher was working on before he got whacked. So they're doing that. And then Alistair and Thomas are trying to figure out how to kill the zombie demon Silent Brothers, because they're really hard to kill because they're zombies, so they keep getting back up. And Cordelia and Lucy are doing secret plan. They are going into a graveyard and purposefully summoning Lilith. And Lilith is showing up in the graveyard, and Lucy, like, makes a pentagram to contain her out of, like, ghosts. And Lilith's like, oh my god, what the hell are you doing? So Cordelia is like, here's the deal, girly. You need to send me and Lucy to hell right now. We gotta get our friends. So Lilith's like, okay, well, here's the deal. I'll send you guys to hell, and I'll let you guys out of hell, and then I won't bother you guys, and you will no longer be tied to me as my paladin, but only if your sword strikes Belial down, because Lilith does not like Belial, because Belial stole Lilith's, like, Hell Kingdom. She wants her Hell Kingdom back. So they basically have very similar goals, so it's kind of weird. You're like, what are Lilith's motivations here? Shouldn't she be helping Cordelia as much as she possibly can? Because Cordelia is the only one with the sword, Cortana, that is able to, kill Belial. So you're like, why is Lilith even against them? I guess she's just against them because she's evil. She's the mother of all demons. So you're like, okay, cool. And Lilith is like, okay, go. I'm sending you guys to hell. So Lucy and Cordelia get sent to hell, which is what they wanted. Meanwhile, Alistair and Thomas find out how to kill the zombified demon Silent Brothers. You just kind of like stab them in the neck, in the back of the neck, like specific area. I don't know. So, yay, they figure that out. Thomas gets a little bit injured, but he's fine. And then Jesse and Grace figure out how to do the fire messages, so they're successfully getting messages to the outside world about what is going on in London. So Cordelia and Lucy are in hell now. They run into a demon who asks for their secrets. I actually enjoy this part. I love, like, Cassandra Clare's little demon characters. They're, like, so funny, and they're always so camp. So they encounter this demon. This demon's like, ooh, I love juicy gossip. Give me a secret, please. They're like, okay. Their secrets are actually kind of lame. But Cordelia reveals that she had a crush on James for, like, 5 years, and she never told Lucy, which, like, okay, that's not that bad. You're married now anyway. Lucy reveals that when she and Cordelia were about to be parabatai, because they were destined, for a while they wanted to be parabatai, like Matthew and James are, but when they were doing their parabatai ceremony, a bunch of ghosts rose up in Lucy's vision, and she got a little bit scared. She was like, what are the ghosts trying to do? So she backed out of it, and she never told Cordelia. And now they're, like, weirdly pissed at each other because of it. But I'm like, these freaking secrets aren't even juicy. But the demon is satisfied, and they get to pass through. So, meanwhile, James and Matthew are still in their little hell prison. And Belial keeps trying to wear James down and be like, let me possess you. And James keeps being like, no. But now he's like, okay, like, he's not gonna keep taking no for an answer. He's just gonna do it like he's gonna possess me non-consensually at some point. So he's like, well, I'll just make a deal with him. So he makes a deal that he's gonna let Belial possess him as long as he doesn't harm any of his loved ones, including Matthew, who's just sitting down here in hell going through withdrawal. Belial's like, okay, cool, slay. He possesses James. Meanwhile, Cordelia and Lucy finally make it to the hell prison, and they only find Matthew there. They're like, where the hell is James? Where the hell? Okay, so, and Matthew's like, oh, James just got possessed. They're going back to London. So they find the portal back to London. Cordelia, Lucy, and Matthew make it back to London. In London, here's what's going down. Anna and Ariadne have found the exit from the London area because it's been like enclosed. So they make it out. They make it to Idris. All their other friends are there, and they're like, hey, what's going on? They're like, you gotta come in. Like, the fight is happening now. We gotta bring the entire, like, Shadowhunter society. So a ton of people come in. They're letting them back in. You know, they're gearing up. The war is about to begin. James, possessed James, shows up. Turns out when James is possessed, he can, like, he's just, like, stuck in his head, I guess. But he can, like, talk. He and Belial are, like, talking in his head. But he can't control any of his movements. So Belial's basically like, my master plan, become king of London. His master plan's just like becoming king of England, or like even just like mayor of London or something. I don't know, because previously he was just like, he just wanted control over London, and now he's like crowning himself king, which like honestly feels weirdly unambitious for a prince of hell, you know what I mean? But maybe that's going to lead to something even more, like, malignant. The crowning process is taking a long time, which is good because this gives everybody more time to, like, show up and beat his ass. So Cordelia shows up with Cortana, and she's like, everyone needs to help me get to James. So everybody is helping Cordelia get to James to, you know, figure out what to do, how to get Belial out of him. Lucy, meanwhile, is having a revelation. She reunites with Jesse. She's like, Jesse, make out with me right now. And Jesse's like, oh, okay. So they're making out in the middle of a battle, like, passionately, because Lucy is trying to get into the shadow realm. This is so weird. So Lucy, after they've made out substantially, she's in the shadow realm. She finds the Silent Brothers, and she finds, like, their spirits, and she's like, hey, you're being possessed. Like, get out there. Stop being possessed. We're in danger. And that freaking works. Like, she, like, passes out due to the effort. Jesse's like, oh my god. And all the Silent Brothers, like, get unpossessed. And now they're not a threat anymore. And now the biggest thing, they all gotta get to Belial. So Cordelia makes it to Belial, to James. And she's like, James, I love you, or something. I don't know. Like, they exchange some banter. And basically, with the power of love, James is able to, like, break through his possession and, like, take control of the body for a bit in time to, like, catch Cortana. Like, Cordelia is throwing Cortana to James. He catches it, and then he stabs himself in the heart. Cordelia's like, I did not know you were gonna do that. Holy shit. So... there's an absolutely jarring transition at this point where Anna and Ariadne were like fighting or something, and then all the Silent Brothers obviously get like unpossessed, so they're no longer a threat, and they're like, they embrace each other. They're like, oh my god, let's be together and like be like cottagecore lesbians. And they're like, oh my god, slay. And then we have like, after that, they're like, yeah, let's be together forever. I'm so happy right now. And it cuts to Cordelia screaming because James just impaled himself on Cortana. And I'm like, what kind of transition was that? Like, I like snorted like out loud. I was like, that's funny. We get back to James and Cordelia, and turns out James did a good thing. He took a risk, but it worked because it expelled the demon from him, the evil demon grandfather. He basically got whacked. But James is still alive, and he's, like, wounded, he's very injured, but Cordelia uses the flat side of Cortana's blade, and she's like, I can heal, a paladin's weapon can, like, heal wounds or something, which is interesting, because this is reliant on Cordelia being, Lilith's paladin still. But later on, like right after this, Lilith shows up and she's like, "Ha, you're still my paladin." Like, because James delivered the killing blow to Belial, like, by impaling himself. And Cordelia's like, "No, actually. You just said my weapon had to kill. My sword had to kill Belial," which, Cortana did. So Lilith's like, "What?" And she's like, "So, like, I'm not really your paladin anymore. Like, I wasn't ever since, like, James, like, impaled himself." And you're like, okay, that's great, she's no longer her paladin. But also, that means that the sword should never have worked when Cortana used the flat of the sword to, like, heal James's wound. Because at that point, this is after Belial got whacked. So after Belial gets whacked, Cordelia is no longer Lilith's paladin. So that shouldn't have worked. That was weird. Like, was there no way for Cassandra Clare to figure that out? But it's whatever. So, yay, all is good. Cordelia is no longer Lilith's paladin. She can now wield a weapon without Lilith randomly showing up and, like, trash-talking her or something. And then Belial, and then, once everyone's good, everyone's safe, we cut to, like, a little, like, bonus scene where Jem is Jem. He's, like, a prominent Silent Brother character. He's just sitting around. He's, like, related to some of these people, but he's, like, a bit older. And he sees, like, a middle-aged looking dude, and he's like, "Hey, middle-aged looking dude." And the middle-aged looking dude is like, "Hi, I'm Belial." And Jem is like, "But we just whacked you." And he's like, "Yeah, but, like, you can never really kill a demon, so, like, I'm still here, but, like, I don't really want to mess with these people anymore." So, like, that was weird. I don't know why that was necessary. We could have just believed that he was dead. He doesn't come back or anything. I don't know. Now to the epilogue. So, what happens in the epilogue? James and Lucy lose their demon powers when Belial dies, so Lucy can no longer raise ghosts, and James, he honestly never used this ability in this book, which is weird, but last book, he had this thing where he could, like, shadow teleport. So he can no longer do that, but it doesn't matter because he never even thought about doing it this book. So, yeah, they lose their demon abilities. Oh, James loses his ability to fire that magic gun with the Bible verse on the side of it. So that's interesting. Lucy and Cordelia become parabatai finally. Yay, besties for evsies. The baby, do you remember the baby? Do you remember Alistair and Cordelia's mom's baby? Their baby brother, because she's pregnant. That was, like, around when she was like, "Let's move to Tehran," right? Because of the baby. Well, that's, like, completely gotten rid of because she was like, "Never mind, I don't want to move to Tehran anymore." The line is literally, her desire to move to Tehran had rather miraculously evaporated after a month-long visit from her family following Zachary's birth. So, yeah, even the text says that rather miraculous, she doesn't want to move there anymore. But it was, like, a point of contention because a lot of Alistair and Thomas's relationship angst was built on Alistair was going to move away with his mom, and Thomas was like, "No, you should stay here with me." So, like, they just got rid of it. Cool. I mean, sure. There's, like, this weird scene. I don't know, this scene, like, works, but, like, it's so weird. They're having, like, this summer camp-like vibe where they're, like, burying their, like, past regrets or something. They're the things they regret doing. So, like, for example, Matthew buries a wine bottle because he's no longer an alcoholic. Yay, Matthew. Ari, they're just, like, it's all the characters together, and they're just, like, they're just going through and basically saying what they've learned. It's, like, really weird in, like, a really, like, unsubtle way of, like, proving that your characters had character development. It's strange. So, Matthew buries the wine bottle because he's no longer alcoholic. Ariane, she buries, like, the blackmail letter to be like, "Yeah, I don't want to associate with my dad who blackmailed." Blackmail's not good. And Thomas buries his love confession. In the very beginning of the book, Thomas, like, writes this little messy little love confession to Alistair, and it never really gets to him, but it's whatever. he buries that because he's like, well, I don't need that anymore. We're in love now. Alistair buries a bottle of hair dye. This was stupid, okay? Because in the very beginning of the series in Chain of Gold, Alistair was a bleach blonde because he wanted to be blonde, because he wanted to be white, because he's half Persian, so he's like pissed about it. So he's like, I wish I were white. I'll just be bleach blonde because that's like less bad. So he buries the bottle of hair dye to like prove that like he no longer wants to be white or something, which had nothing to do with any of his development for like the past 2 books, but it's whatever. Cordelia buries her father's scabbard. Scabbard? Like, where do you put a sword in? That. Whatever you put the sword in. She received it as a wedding gift, like, a book ago, from her dad just before he died, because he was, like, weirdly abusive and he showed up late to her wedding. So she's basically, like, letting go of her dad in that way. Which is weird because there was very little discussion about her dad in this book. This feels like an afterthought. And it feels like Cassandra Clare just didn't have anything for her to dump in the hole, but whatever. Anna says, I'm burying nothing, I'm perfect. This also feels like Cassandra Clare just didn't have something to dump in the hole. And I wrote here, Anna buries nothing because she's not well developed enough to have an object. Cool. Grace buries the bracelet that she put on James to like seduce him. It like broke off when Cordelia and James were making out passionately in the last book. Due to how strong their love is, it just like broke in half. And Grace somehow has it, so she buries the bracelet to put aside her seduction days. Yay for Grace. Jessie buries the broken hilt of the Blackthorn sword. A contrived thing happened when Jessie got resurrected, when he got necromanced, and his weapon of choice was the Blackthorn sword. It's like this big hefty sword. He used it like in the final battle, but their maid, Bridget, not the one who hit on Jessie, the other one, who was the Institute's maid, she was like randomly there. She's just a mundane. She's not even a shadow hunter. She like picked up the sword, she like raised it to the heavens, like lightning struck it, and then it just like shattered, but only the hilt remained. So he just has the hilt of the Blackthorn sword. He just tossed it in the hole. And he's like, it's because like I'm no longer like connected to my mother, who was like bad and honestly disowned me anyway. Cool. Lucy buries a drawing of a pyxis from Emmanuel Gast. I had to Google what the hell that was. Apparently, like a book ago, Lucy used her ghost powers to like kind of like explode this man, Emmanuel Gast. So she's like saying bye to her ghost powers. That's fine, whatever. And James buries the pistol. It doesn't even work anyway, so that wasn't much of a sacrifice, but cool. Like, that's weird, right? Like, why'd they have them dump their stuff in a hole? It feels lazy to me, but honestly, I had a good time. I think that's like my entire point here. This book honestly felt vaguely lazy to me, but I still had a good time, so I feel like I can't really criticize it that much. Like, I really enjoyed myself. I do really like the character interactions. They're just really cute. I like the characters. I love, like, the world that Cassandra Clare has built in all these books that she's written. This world is just so well developed. It's so iconic. There's so many possibilities, and it's so, like, she's just branded herself so well, and I feel like just in this world of, it's because anything is possible in this world. Like, there's so many demons who can be the villain. Lucifer exists. I really hope Lucifer is coming back. I want to see this man. Like, it's just, well, does God exist, though? We don't know. The Bible does. Yeah, I think my entire takeaway here is that I shouldn't still like Cassandra Clare books, but somehow I do. And there's just, yeah, that's that. I did think this book was kind of too long. Reminder of how freaking huge she is. Like, every time I took this book out like at school to read it a bit, I'd like slam it down on the table and everybody around me is like, what is that? Like, why are you reading that? It's ginormous. It's just like too big. I do feel like some parts were lagging. Like some parts I even wanted to cut out of the summary, but I feel like I want to summarize everything properly just to give you a look of what the hell was going on here. Like, like the mirror thing they find in the Blackthorn Manor, and then like James just looks into it and there are demons. Like, we knew that, right? Like, we spent like 2 chapters getting this mirror thing that never comes back up again, and I'm like, what was the point of that, you know? I feel like it could have been shorter. Also, just how dark it got, but I feel like the emotions of the characters never matched just the severity of the events going on around them. Back to like my grieving point about the fact that nobody grieves right in this freaking book, and we never see the strong emotions of a character like up close and personal, because it's always another character observing that character. Hey, okay, so I look different for a second. I look like kind of not cute, but I need to like do a better conclusion, because when I originally filmed, I'd honestly been filming for like an hour and like 45 minutes already, and I was like really tired, and I like really fumbled through that conclusion. So we're gonna do a better one, and I actually have like a lot more to talk about. God, this is an unflattering angle. So we're gonna talk about like the things I liked and the things I didn't like overall. So the things I didn't like, it's a lot. A lot of it involves just like things that weren't included, which is crazy because this book's like really long. So you're like, you want more things in this really long book? Like, you just complained that the book was like too long. But I'm like, no, I feel like you included things that weren't necessary and you excluded things that I would have really liked to see. Okay, so things I didn't like. Christopher and Grace were done so dirty, which really sucks, because Christopher and Grace, I feel like they had a lot of potential. They came into this book with like a lot of potential. Like, you were like, oh my god, they're gonna be in love. It's gonna be so sweet. They're both kind of like they're almost like the quiet, studious types, but like you wouldn't really like notice them. But now they're gonna like hang out together and they're gonna really like feel a connection. But both of them, first of all, Christopher got killed. And Grace, after she joins the team, after she runs out of the Silent City and she joins the team, she really has like no other major character beats except for, I think this one part I forgot to mention, which was actually like a really good part. This is like their biggest moment in the book. It's after Christopher dies, and Grace is trying to like replicate his fire message situation, and she's like sitting alone in the lab, and she's like, oh my god, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And then she's like, I wish Christopher were here right now. And she closes her eyes, and she feels like someone like touching her shoulder, and it's Christopher, and Christopher's like, don't look at me, because like his like physical embodiment is like very weak. He's like not really a ghost, but he's like forcing himself to be like there for Grace, and he's like, hey, you just gotta like believe in yourself, I believe in you. And Grace is like, oh my god, and she opens her eyes and Christopher is gone. And that was good. But it really sucks that Christopher got killed. Okay? And it's not just because I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that was the point. Maybe I'm supposed to be upset about this, you know? Because he just had so much potential. And he got pretty well developed in this book, I'd say. Like, he's just a really empathetic guy, and you're like, wow, I can't wait to see what happens with Grace and Christopher. And then Christopher gets killed, and Grace becomes like a non-character after she joins the team. But it's okay. I feel like Grace never really gets truly forgiven. She just kind of is there. And she like replaces Christopher's skill set, so you're just like, they just replace Christopher with Grace. And it honestly kind of felt like Cassandra Clare just killed Christopher off because he's the character that she cared the least about, but she wanted to like make the stakes higher by killing a character off. And I do feel like it was a better done death than a lot of the other deaths in a lot of Cassandra Clare books, but I still get to be upset about it. And besides, I already talked about how like there wasn't enough time to mourn, but even in the conclusion, nobody says anything about Christopher. Like, when they're all, like, burying their things. But even before that, no one's like, oh, we honored Christopher in this way, or, like, we all thought about Christopher or something. Like, he's never mentioned in the conclusion, which is, like, kind of weird. I don't know. It's not... I feel like this is a very subjective opinion. Like, a lot of people might be like, wow, because you feel so upset about it, this means that Christopher's death was done well. As opposed to a lot of the other deaths in Cassandra Clare books, like Max Lightwood, and I'm about to spoil the hell out of these books, okay? Like Max Lightwood and, like, Livy Blackthorn and, like, Robert Lightwood, like, I didn't really care. But this one, I was kind of like, how could you do that? Which, I don't know. I guess I'm in the middle about that. Things I wished we saw, but we did not see, there are a lot, okay? So, which is really weird, because you're like, Justine, if we included all the things you wished you saw, then this would be like 200 pages longer. It'd be like a 1,000-page book, and then you'd you'd be complaining about how big it is. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, okay? But I'm still gonna talk about it because I don't know, okay? So I really want to see how Alistair feels about Charles finally coming out, when him not really coming out was like the thing that ruined their relationship and made it kind of toxic, and it caused Charles to be like really mean to Alistair and like treat him really poorly. And then now, after a bit of nudging, Charles is like coming out to everyone. I don't know. I feel like this goes along with the issue of Alistair only getting like one POV in this book. I want to see how Grace and Jesse feel about their abusive mom being dead. That was never discussed. Cordelia kills Tatiana, which I thought was also kind of weird, because Cordelia has like no connection to Tatiana, and Grace isn't even really present for her death. And then Grace never really thinks about, wow, my mom's dead, she raised me. Jesse never really thinks about it. I don't know. It's just really weird. I think Cassandra Clare just forgot, which is like, yeah, that's bad. I want to see more how... I'm going to keep mentioning this, but how everybody felt about Christopher being dead. Can we get an Anna POV, please? And I want to know how Matthew feels about Alistair being part of the group now, because there's like, okay, Alistair gets accepted into the group like so easily. We hated Alistair for like 2 whole books. Nobody wanted to see him. Every time he turned up, everybody's like, oh my god, Alistair. Now suddenly he just like shows up and people are like, we like Alistair. And I'm like, how'd that happen? Like, I thought the entire conflict of Alistair's entire character is that you guys didn't like him. But now in like 2 sentences, it's resolved. Everyone loves Alistair. And I'm like, well, I wish we got someone's POV where they felt conflicted about it. Other things I would have liked to see, like an entire year ago, I posted a review for this book on Goodreads, basically writing out all my predictions. And wow, they were incredibly incorrect. I think I'm just very bad at predicting things, but okay, here are the things I predicted and the level at which I am upset about them not being in the book. So, number 1, Cordelia ends up with James because obviously. That one was in the book because I'm not stupid. Obviously, they're going to end up together. Number 2, Alistair and Matthew fight each other, like maybe with their fists, and Thomas is like, no, I love him. I just want it to happen like really bad. That is what I wrote out in my Goodreads review. So, I am upset about this. I love a good fist fight. In this entire book, I don't think anyone's fist fought anybody, which, like, come on, guys. Maybe just a little bit. I just think it could have been, like, a quick way to have a bit of conflict about it and then resolve it, But it's whatever. It's not whatever, I'm upset. Number 3, I said Grace and Christopher end up together because we know Cassie doesn't like to leave people single. So I was, like, partially right, like, they were kind of together, but, like, not really, because Christopher got immediately killed before anything could happen. So I'm upset about that. I was rooting for them. Number 4, Lucy and Jesse get evil. This did not happen whatsoever. Lucy necromants Jesse. They explained away the moral repercussions of necromancy real quick, and then they just brought them right back, and they're all good. They never have, like, any morally gray moments, really, so... That was kind of weird. Even though in the second book, I feel like they were kind of building Lucy up to have kind of like a morally gray arc where she like kind of explodes Emmanuel gassed or something. I really don't remember this happening, but I do remember I was getting a feeling that Lucy was getting like kind of maybe a little bit evil, but no, she doesn't get evil whatsoever. Which is fine. That's fine. Number 5, Grace kills her mom. In parentheses, little Gabriel and his worm dad moment. So in the Infernal Devices, right, Gabriel kills his worm dad, and it's kind of like a moment where he's like, wow, my dad was a bad person, he was having sex with demons, and he got demon pox, and it's kind of like, it's just very important to his story arc. So that's why I thought that Grace would be the one to kill her mom, because I think out of all the characters, Grace has like the biggest attachment to Tatiana, and killing her would kind of be like letting go of that attachment and doing the thing that is the morally correct thing to do. Like simultaneously like freeing herself from her mom's control, but no, that doesn't happen. We just have Cordelia kill Tatiana, and Grace doesn't even see it, and we never even really see Cordelia. I mean, Cordelia just says, I killed her, and then we get, like, no reaction from Grace. I don't know, I just think it would have been better if Grace delivered the killing blow, and then that could have been, like, Grace's big moment in this book, you know? Like, it's, like, denouncing her evil past and denouncing the person who made her do bad things to other people. So, number 6, I said Matthew doesn't die. I was correct. For some weird reason, everybody was saying that Matthew was going to die. Is it because he has alcoholism? So they were like, he's gonna die because he has like some seizure or something? I don't know. But, and then I wrote in parentheses, I know a lot of people think he's gonna die, but historically Cassie doesn't kill important characters off. Actually, if Matthew doesn't have a love interest by the end of the book, he'll probably die. That was not really true. Matthew actually doesn't really have a love interest by the end of the book, and he actually doesn't die either, which I actually really applaud Cassandra Clare for, because she doesn't do that often. Like, Cordelia admits that she never really had romantic feelings for Matthew, and Matthew doesn't get killed. He's just a single guy, and he lives on. And that's really good. You know, showing that single people deserve to have rights, and they deserve the right to be alive. And then 7, in a desperate attempt to save Matthew, I said, Matthew with Lucy, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm just trying to get my boy a love interest or he might die. So that wasn't true. So I think we've learned a few things. One, I'm very bad at predicting. And second of all, Cassandra Clare should consult me. Okay, so I think it's interesting that for such a large book, most of my critiques are things I wish that she added and not things that I want her to take away. But honestly, this could just be a testament to, like, how much I love Cassandra Clare characters. Like, I wanted more from them, you know? Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe I would have liked a longer book. And now we're going to talk about things I liked, because I did like some things. So I guess there are a lot of small things, but I feel like all these small things add together make a good Cassandra Clare book for me, and maybe the reason why I keep reading Cassandra Clare books, and I will continue to keep reading Cassandra Clare books. So I really like Matthew and James's friendship. Do you say James's or James? Matthew and James' friendship. I think intimate male friendships that never border on romance are sometimes hard to find. And I know, if I go on, like, Archive of Our Own right now and I search Matthew and James, a ton of stuff is going to come up, because people just like to ship people who are even, like, remotely intimate with each other. And I think it's really valuable to portray a friendship that's, like physically intimate, everything. Like, I'm personally very physically intimate with my friends, and I've had a lot of people be like, wow, like, are you guys dating? It's like, no, I'm just touchy. And I think it's really nice to see a friendship with two boys where they're touchy with each other and they're just really comfortable around each other, and it never ever borders on romance. And I really, really like that. And in a way, I kind of understand what Cassandra Clare was doing. She's also fueling fan content for James and Matthew. People who want James and Matthew to get together, now they have a bit of fuel. Is this queer baiting? No, not really. No, not really. There is, like, no implication that they're ever going to get together romantically. We just have moments where, like, Matthew leans his head on James's shoulder, and you're like, obviously, he's going through withdrawal, and they're good friends. He's allowed to do that. But I know a lot of people are going to be out here in, like, fandom spaces saying things like, oh, wow, they're in love with each other. I didn't even know why Cordelia was a factor. But I don't know. I just really appreciate that. I loved the aesthetic and the vibes of London being on demon NPC mode. Like, everybody just, like, it was really giving, like, WandaVision. You know, when all the, like, normal locals in the town in WandaVision are just, like, also on NPC mode. Like, they just do the same things every day and they're not really in control. I don't know. I thought it was really cool. And there were some moments that were, like, genuinely, like, disturbing. Like, there's this scene where they're, like, walking around and there are these two infants, like, breastfeeding on, like, a demon, and they don't even know because they're on NPC mode. It's just, I don't know. It's just a really dark and I feel like unique environment for Cassandra Clare to have created, and I really appreciate that. I like the idea of getting the parents to go away by sending them all to Idris, because I love it. Okay, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you know, why do we have to get the parents to go away? Obviously, we have to get the parents to go away. These people are teenagers. They have to do this stuff. Like, the parents can't be here, or it's not going to be, you know, the YA story we all love. So I like that. It felt realistic that all the parents had to go away. And honestly, because, you know, we have some, like, older characters, obviously the parents would be like, yeah, it's fine. You guys just stay at home for a sec. We'll be back in, like, a week. I thought it was realistic, it was believable, and I was really excited. I was like, yeah, get the parents out of here. And everybody gets to, like, live in the institute for, like, safety purposes, so it's, like, a really big, like, long sleepover. It just seems really fun. I liked how emotional we got to see Anna in this book, because honestly, before, I kind of thought Anna was a very, like, she was a little bit too smooth, and I'm like, well, she's not a very interesting character, but in this book, she has a lot of emotional conflict, like, when her younger brother Alexander's kidnapped, we see her get, like, really hysterical, and after Christopher dies, she gets, like, borderline, like, suicidal, and it's really, I really enjoyed seeing that, you know. I think it makes Anna a much more real character, and I do enjoy her a lot more in this book than in previous books. I really enjoyed that demon, that sassy little demon that they meet in Hell. Oh my god, and there's a bonus demon that I forgot to recognize in my summary. Belial, when he's trying to convince James to let him possess him, flies in on, like, this little feathered giant bird demon, and the bird demon is, like, so sassy and he talks, like, so much. I don't know, it's just funny. I love demon characters, and I love that we got to see some. I liked the Merry Thieves helping Matthew stop being an alcoholic. I was really sold on their friendship in this book. Like, there's that one bit where they all stay over at Matthew's house to, like, accompany him, and they're all sleeping on, like, this rug together with their dog, and I'm like, that's really adorable. That's really cute. The angst is so, I wrote here, the angst is so fucking good. Cassandra Clare's, like, so good at writing romantic tension. It's just, like, it's so good. I honestly feel like this is why she's kind of, her writing style is kind of made for me. I just love angst. Like, there are scenes, oh my god, Anna and Thomas with Ariadne and Alistair especially, like, there are scenes where they're just, like, hanging out with their love interest, and they're, like, they start, like, thinking really cheesy thoughts, like, wow, her eyelashes are, like, flower petals, and then she's like, shut up, Anna. It's just really cute. I liked it. I liked that we got a bit more of The Beautiful Cordelia. If you haven't read the other two books, The Beautiful Cordelia is just, like, this story that Lucy is writing for Cordelia, and it's, like, really cheesy. It's just very rom-com. In this one, we get a plot twist where after Lucy realizes that Cordelia's been, like, hiding things from her, she writes, like, the evil witch Cordelia, and it's, like, a subversion of The Beautiful Cordelia, where she says things like, oh, the evil witch Cordelia has killed evil Prince James, which is what she calls her brother, because, like, she started this a while ago. I don't know, it's so sweet, it's so funny, it's, like, really hilarious, like, the way it's written. It's just so self-indulgent. I enjoyed The Beautiful Cordelia, and we got to read some of it in Hell. It's just a really good time. So, yeah, that was the better conclusion. Cut back to me when I looked better. So, Justine, did you like this book, is what the question is. Yes, I did like this book. I liked reading this book a lot. It's certainly a book. Cassandra Clare just has such a distinct voice, and story and characters even, and I think it's just perfect for me. Like, she's perfect for me. We're soulmates. It's like she writes for me. It's just the perfect amount of self-indulgence that I enjoy. There's just really there, something very important about these books to me. I'd say Cassandra Clare is one of the most impactful like artists on my life. Um, yeah, it's crazy how long I've loved her books, how much I've loved the stuff she's put out. Um, and yeah, basically my entire teenage life, even preteen life, I've been a Cassandra Clare stan, and I'm still a Cassandra Clare stan. Yes, her incest stuff was weird. I feel like we can just acknowledge it and move on. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, that was Chain of Thorns. Those were my thoughts. That was the summary. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Let me know if you would be interested in like a Cassandra Clare video just in general, like my relationship with Cassandra Clare, why I think I love her book so much, um, which series I like the best, whatever the hell. Yeah, because I feel like I've had a very interesting history with her, and I have a lot to talk about regarding Cassandra Clare.